All right, guys. So I'm here with the second grade team at Roanoke, and they have so graciously allowed me to come, and we're going to just debrief our Kathy Richardson results. So I know you may or may not be done with all your kids, but I see you guys already have this document ready to go. So we're just going to talk through what should be in each of these places, and then kind of talk through next steps. So hopefully by the time we leave our little session together, all you'll have to do is finish adding your names, and you'll be good to go in terms of what you'd submit to Shelly and I.
Great.
Okay?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So this assessment, among lots of things that you were doing with the grouping 10s, so you presented them with those 34 cubes, and they had to do several things with them. The first thing was figure out how many there are. So that's really the main focus around what you're actually turning in terms of data to Shelly and I, because we want to know in Northwest in second grade, what kids, how many students are we talking can look at an amount, figure out how many 10s and 1s that is, and be able to group that and know, and how many are able to, they can count them and kind of be able to figure that out. And then we have some that they just struggle with figuring out how many there are. So that's kind of the reason for these three different sections. There's also the conservation of number piece that's on the back. That's definitely a tool you guys will use for your instructional purposes, but that's just not something you have to report to the district. Okay. So, but you still, of course, I would still want to know as a second
so we're
grade
basically
teacher.
just reporting the front page, but
Exactly.
the back is just data for us.
Exactly. Okay. You're exactly right. So we're just going to be looking at just the front for our purposes today. So really, we're kind of almost looking at this first, like that part one before the going back and going on, where they were really determining the quantity for 34. So in order to place names in these boxes, we just really need to decide, in looking at this, was that student able to determine the quantity with using 10s and 1s? So that would be this last box here, that third section. So really any student that really that A right there, that they know the total quantity without having to count every single one, they were able to just look at the 10s, group them in 10s and 1s, and say, oh, 10, 20, 30, 4, got it, and do it quickly. So that's what would be in that last box. And then the middle, they are able to know that it's 34, but they maybe had to count them all to get there. And maybe they were even able to put them in 10s and 1s, but they still kept rechecking. Because I know you guys probably had some of those that they still kept rechecking those 10s to make sure that's 10. Or they counted all of them by 1s anyway, even though they were already in 10s. So that's kind of what that middle section would be. And then that far left, they really struggled with the quantity piece.
So the difference between these two, because this group could come up with the total quantity,
right,
but just the way they came about it was a little bit more labored.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
that would be that
the
middle.
Okay.
And then that A, if they were able to just look at it and know, using what they know about place value in the groups, to be able to just skip count by the 10s quickly and then add on that 4 without really having to think hard about it, then that would be that last column.
Okay.
So if you want to just take a minute to kind of go through your sheets and kind of place those students where you think they might fall. And if there's one that you're like, not sure, we can kind of just talk about that one as a group.
So this determines quantity here is both where I would look for to place them either here in the P area or the A area.
So for that determines quantity, if they were able to,
Because
So
I've got it wrong.
Yes, so you've got Ashlyn that said that she didn't estimate correctly.
okay,
So she said that there were 20, but she estimated that she could make 4
that
groups
would
of
be
10.
4 10s.
So she wouldn't be in this.
Not
with
necessarily. What happened when she actually started to make her groups of 10? When she made them?
Once she made them, she immediately identified, oh, that's 30 and that's 4, that's 34. And then she was easily able to add the 10, 44, and then take away 10, 24.
So it was just that first
So it was
question.
that first where she was just estimating that she was kind of like shooting in the dark.
So why did you put her as a P? What did she do to make you put her at a P?
Because she actually counted 10, 20, 34 instead of just saying 34.
Okay.
That's kind of how I judged or
See, that's something we can kind of talk about because that would be a student that I would be pretty excited for a student that can do that at this point. Can look at that pretty quickly and just say 10, 20, 34 and be able to know that. The A, they kind of had to be able to, they already said, well, that's 3 10s and 4 1s, so that's 34 without having to recount again. So that's, we can kind of maybe decide even together right now, where do we really feel like,
what if
because this is using place value and they are using their place value to
True.
do that.
And then on the back, I know we're not reporting that, but
Right.
she was, I mean, she had that conservation. I'm
Mhm.
like, if you were counting these by 5, how many would be 34? And she just had a little smile on her face. She knew that there was 34s. There was no question about it.
Right.
So,
I was thinking of putting, because I have one student that it took him a while as well to count those 10s,
Mm-hmm.
but he knew once he said 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. But I was thinking of putting him as a P, but starring him and just knowing
Mhm.
that that student is possibly in between a P and an A, not really just a P or an A.
That's kind of what I was thinking because with this one, to me that says they need more practice with it. So I would keep them here just to say that maybe they're not fully on the right side yet, but they just need more practice with it.
So just
And
make
with-
a note at the bottom.
Mhm,
like
yeah,
put
you
a
can,
star
and
then
you'll
put-
be able to keep this. This
Okay.
is yours to keep. What you guys are actually going to do is just one person will collect them when you're completely done. Just scan them and just email them to us, so you can actually keep this for yourself. This is a great tool for you to know, and even off to the side if you want to even write what that little star means for you, or if you just know. But for Ashlyn, I'd probably say, I mean, did she really count out like the 10, 20, 30, and then the 4?
yeah, she just kind of tapped it 10, 20, 34.
See, she's another one that I might go ahead and put her here.
Okay.
Because for this one, we're really wanting to see, are they looking at the 10, the 30, because they've already made the groups of 3, or the groups of 10, I'm sorry, the 3 groups of 10, and then have the 4 already sitting. So really, we're hoping that they don't even have to recount, that they know 3 groups of 10 and 4 is 34. So I would say to keep her maybe in the middle, and then maybe you can even put a little star next to her, because that would be someone that they just really need to work on that more instantaneous piece.
Okay.
What would you say for students who inaccurate counting at first? Like I have a student who, when I asked how many groups of 10 did you make, she said 3, and how many leftovers? 4, and I said, well, then how many does that make? She said 32, and I said, I just kind of said, okay, and apparently I made a face because then she looks back and she goes, hold on, 10, 34. So then
She just miscounted.
it was like
that
she
very
missed,
first.
she like inaccurately, she missed out. And then the other deal, so then I went back and when I asked her about the 17 and I asked her how many trains do you think, she didn't give me an answer. She couldn't figure it out. So she started making them and there was just some miscounting. So and some misgrouping. So would you say an A? She's definitely not an A.
Right.
And so, I mean, on here, like, she counted by all 1s at first, and then she counted by 10s. So I'm wondering.
Yeah,
right
it's
here.
definitely between. I would say, I mean, because
would
when
almost
you
put her here
kind of
first.
prompt.
There's no punishment to put her
Oh, I
there.
know.
Right.
It's just, it's
It is
just
what it is.
really to focus us.
And so just knowing that she needs to work when she's making her groups. Because then she had some trouble even skip counting. She like she could skip count by 5s really well, but one of her groups had 6 in it. And so she ended up getting to 33 because her groups of 5 were not all 5.
Right.
So she's just not being really careful. So, okay. Now
I would maybe put her
I'm thinking
here.
'cause
Yeah,
I'm
only
saying
because I was listening to you when you got to the 17 and how she she really had to make them in order to really think about it. And if that's only one group of 10, so it sounds like she just really needs practice. That it's not that there's a misunderstanding of some sort. She just might need more practice, the repetition. for
So
her.
you're putting her in the eyes column.
Yeah, or in that unable, because really at first she wasn't able to determine it accurately. It kind
Okay.
of took some
And with the
questioning
17
and
too,
prompting.
it kind of.
Yeah, that concerned me a little bit.
Mhm.
That she's not making that connection between the number and then the real tens in ones place. So
Right.
I have, obviously I'm a dual language teacher, so I have a couple of students that speak no English whatsoever, so I've had to translate. So are we going to put them at an A or a P? I mean, this student
Oh, because they
understood-
don't speak any English,
Yes,
but they were able
know
to
the
do
concept,
it in.
it's
Mhm.
just that they don't obviously,
Right. I would keep them based on knowing the concept.
okay.
And then you knowing them that their
It's-
English
I did
is
make a
limited,
note,
that
like,
you would
student
just
has difficulty understanding English, teacher translated.
right.
Just so that way they know, I remember.
Yeah, you can definitely do it by conceptually. Do they have it? And then you just know that I have to work with them on the English side
Yes.
of things. Mhm.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
So it's looking like, I mean, you guys have large chunks of students that are they're able to use place value
Yes,
to
I mean,
determine
I just got
quantity.
started, but this
Mhm.
was, there's
That's
going to
what
be
you're
more
saying.
here than anywhere.
Yeah,
Very big difference from last year.
awesome.
But
Very
I
big
think,
difference.
we were talking about that earlier during our planning, and we were talking about how just exposing the kids to tens and ones early on in the school year has really helped them for this test.
Because that hasn't
last
been
year-
typical in the
No,
past.
last year they were like, we were all,
In first grade, they heard it this past year in first grade.
they had
so-
experiences last year in first grade with place value and making packs of 10. We did the math in the city book, and so I think that has come into play. They
Mhm.
had a lot more experience already, but yeah, most of my kids are going to be over here for sure.
Well, that kind of, empowers us a little bit to, that we're on the right track with the things that we're doing. So it really is helping. And sometimes we don't see it until a year later or years later, but it really is making an impact, which is
And I think, and going back to the first grade, because my kids that are here were not in Northwest ISD last year.
Gotcha.
The ones that were not
Interesting.
in Northwest are the ones that are.
Mhm.
something else.
Okay.
Oh, no problem.
Keep us posted.
So I'm actually really excited even about next year because first grade is doing the grouping games that we did last year in second grade. So I'm really interested to see how they'll do with the same assessment next year. We'll see. So let's just kind of talk about what we want to do for the kids that fall into each of these categories. In this book, which you guys may have seen this one, there is actually some really great things in the very back on page 59. It kind of goes through and tells you if they're struggling with this, here are some activities you could do with them, which is really nice because you don't have to go and figure it out. Exactly, you don't have to make it up. So I kind of looked through here and kind of thought through some suggestions of things that could be good, but we can take a look at others, or if there are other things that you guys already do that works, then certainly we can put those on our next steps as well. We just want to make sure that we have a plan in place. What are we going to do for them for all of these areas? So I was kind of looking on 59 in the needs instruction for those kiddos that are really struggling with determining the quantity. It's interesting because the first thing that it lists is the grouping games, and I thought, wow, well, good thing we're about to do the grouping games in second grade. So I think that's a good next step. We're already doing that anyway, so we are going to do it. And then another one that I was looking at, let's see, I want to say it was this second one, the Gravinad. And basically, it's kind of hard to read this coding if you don't know what it means. But basically what it means is that there's this number, a colon, and then some other numbers. The number before the colon tells you what book number from the Developing Number Concepts books. And then the second section of numbers, this 1-18, that's just the activity number. So in this book, 1-18 is, I want to say I marked it.
49.
Perfect. I marked it and then forgot that I marked it. Okay, so the grab and add. And with this one, the kids are supposed to be using the place value mat, the boards that we use for the grouping games, and then they grab like an amount of cubes and then place it in on their board. So they have to form the groups of 10 and the ones and be able to tell and write down the quantity. I think that'd be a really good activity for those that are just struggling with doing that. Because if they can't do 34, then they may not be able to do 17 or even something smaller or anywhere in between. So this kind of gives, I like that they have to grab several because it's not just grabbing like 2 or 3 and it will take them forever to make 10 or 20 or 30. They'll be able to make large groups very quickly. And I thought, if you hadn't done the grouping games yet and didn't want to do the board, you just didn't want to sit down and have to work through that piece with them, they could just make groups of 10 and have the ones without the board. So I didn't think that was once you have introduced the grouping games, they could certainly do it on the board, but they could do it without it just the same. And I thought this could be a really good independent activity, as it talks about here. And I was kind of thinking, as you're doing your guided math groups or just their fluency time whenever they finish something, that for these kids, when you talk to them and you could just tell them, whenever you finish your activity, this is what I want you to do. And they can keep it at their desk or wherever, somewhere in the room, that they know anytime they finish something, they take that out and do that activity. And that would be just something that you didn't always have to sit with them for 10 minutes and do, because that's just really hard to do sometimes with a one-on-one type of situation. So what do you guys think about that one?
I think that would work.
I think that would be a good one.
These could also be games that we could send home for them to do at home as well.
And you could literally just type up this little blurb right here or copy it, take a little picture of it and send that home with parents, because they can use it with any object.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter about
cubes.
Exactly. It could be pennies, whatever they have at home, buttons, it doesn't really matter. I thought the cubes at school would be nice because they can connect them into groups of 10, and it's just nice to see that always connected. I don't know. I just think that's always easier for them to see.
It's a good visual.
It is. Then, let's see. I thought this one, the recording various number patterns, I wasn't really too sure about that one because that went so directly with the grouping games that to me, that's not something that we could necessarily do like tomorrow if you wanted to do that with them. But I feel like the grab and add, I think that would take like 2 minutes to teach them how to do, and they could start doing that right then from here on out without it being a long time of sitting with them. So let's see. I was also looking at, and this could be even for the quantity and the ones that need just more practice with it. This section here, this needs practice. It lists a lot of different activities and they're all independent. But just kind of glancing through, it's one of them that I really liked. It's on page 78 in this book. And I can show you guys this one. The lots of lines. So basically what the kids are doing is you would have to create these on like cardstock, on some kind of paper where you could literally just use those designs. And the kids would use cubes to kind of form that shape and then to get their quantity, and then they'd have to figure out how many that took them. So they would actually use a little sheet, let's see, I think it's Black Line Master 126. That's the other thing that's nice about this book. Anything that it says you really need, like Black Line Masters, they're all in the back.
That's nice.
I think it's, yes. And actually it could be this one, and this one had the hundreds, so you could go into something a little higher.
Yeah, depending on those shapes.
Exactly.
The lines that you draw.
So I really like that it was broken into the tens and ones, because usually the students that are in the middle, they're not always necessarily recognizing all the tens and ones and able to count by those quickly. So what you could have them do is they would actually place it around, around the lines, and then I would encourage them to try to make their groups of 10 first and do that quickly, and then write down their ones. I think that they just need that practice of making the tens. The tens is in this place, and if I can count by the tens quickly, then that can help me determine the total quantity quickly. So, and right here in this box, they first put an estimate, which I kind of like because it went with our Kathy Richardson assessment of them having to determine the estimate first, and then this is their guess, and then what they found out. I think in here, I can't remember what it said. They write in there. I think maybe in there they write the letter. Yeah, that's right. They just write the letter of which task they did, so that if that's something you wanted to collect, you could actually see that.
A little bit more
working.
accountability there. That might.
Mm-hmm. And for some of our
might be
friends,
helpful.
that's true. That they need that. So I thought that would be a good one for the middle section. They can determine the quantity. They just need more practice. That's like that, just practice group.
I can see even the ones that can do it, they would still really enjoy that. That
That's
just seems
true.
like kind of a fun way of.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Well, then it looks like there is even a next step to that, so that
Comparing.
those that were able could still do that first level and then take it the next step there.
Exactly. And yeah, that level 2 is the comparing, which actually they'll have to do, with the addition and subtraction, the one we do in the middle of the year, or is it the end of the year? The addition, no, middle of the year, addition.
Yes.
Kathy Richardson, the adding on 10 more and taking away some too. There are even some additional activities that it has in here also that goes directly with that I think would be good for them. Especially the ones in that last column. So you could actually write this one down, the 1-32 lots of lines. And the lots of lines, basically all of these 1-32 through, I want to say it's 1-37, that whole first section, all of them are very similar to that. So like the next one is shapes. So you would have these shapes for them. They have to fill the shape with cubes or counters and then count out the quantity. So it's once again that practice of counting. I even feel like this would be something good even for those strugglers that are struggling to just count properly, like your one little girl that you were talking about.
To count.
That would be good for just practicing her count. I mean, how many times, I know we're in 2nd grade, but they still need that time to do that also.
Right.
I mean,
And-
we're like, they're in 2nd grade, they
organized
don't need to count.
Organized counting,
There were
and I think
several
that
that-
was just, had they been organized, they would
Right.
have been more accurate.
Exactly. And then, pushing them towards organizing them by 10s and 1s. Because that's really the most efficient way that we want them to be able to do it. But maybe for these right now, just a better way than they're doing currently
They're random.
would help. Exactly. So I think that would be good for this one. We don't necessarily have to add a whole bunch of things that we want to do as next steps. It could just be one thing that we're going to commit to doing as a next step. I think that's more reasonable than us putting a long list of activities that we want to do that we're not going to do. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's-
And look at that, on the ready to apply over here, it talks about lots of lines, levels 2 and 3, paper shapes, levels 2 and 3. So,
Exactly. Oh, and
and then
one
you're
thing,
introducing one game and.
And then I also like that it's not signaling anybody out, like you can't play this game,
right.
because.
There's entry points for everyone.
Yes.
Definitely. And one thing I noticed, here it's not the exact same ones that it refers to in the paper shapes, but I thought we could just they're in the back of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure what these go to, but they
Fill those in with blocks
Yes.
or something.
So that's the same.
That could be the exact. It's actually not the same as what's there,
Right.
but I thought we could still use them. It's the same concept. It's
Yeah.
a shape that's already made that they could fill. So, know that that's in the back of this.
Perfect.
I just think the easier it is to be able to like start it tomorrow, or be able to start it quickly. Picking activities that are like that, the more likely we are to make sure that that's happening for our kiddos. And I think all of these would be easy to explain to the kids, and they would be able to just start doing it fairly quickly.
The paper shapes is one of those that has that next level too.
All those levels. I want to say all those first sections, all the way up to cover it up, has those also a level 2 and 3 that I think would be a good next step for the kids that are in that last column. All right, so how are you guys feeling? Feeling pretty
Better.
good? Better?
Better, yes.
Good. So all you'll need to do now is
Yeah.
just finish the rest of the kids that you need to assess and add those in those columns and introduce those couple of activities. You can even just pick 1 or 2 that you just want to start with. I would definitely start with these kids in that first column, introducing those and then doing the rest, over time also. Excellent. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Perfect. See, that wasn't too bad, was it?